Palestinians are exercising their democratic right to vote, but the municipal elections alienated most factions. The Palestinian Authority's party, Fatah, and its affiliates claim victory. Will the elections make a difference to a people under Israeli occupation and violence? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. Local elections are one of the few ways for Palestinians to exercise their democratic rights. But this weekend's vote appears to have diluted that. No ballots were cast in two politically important areas in the occupied West Bank, Ramallah and Nablus, because only one list registered. And turnout was 23% in Deir al-Balah, the only area in Gaza where voting happened. Most candidates were from the Palestinian Authority's Fatah party and its affiliates. Hamas, which has been in control of Gaza since 2007, stayed away. The PA says the elections were for Palestinian unity. Will the vote achieve that? And will it make any difference to Palestinians living under Israeli occupation and violence? We'll raise these issues with our guests, but first, this report by Dmitry Medvedenko.
This is Deir al-Balah in Gaza. The destruction after 2.5 years of Israel's war is visible. For the first time since 2006, the city has held municipal elections. At the age of 34, Adham is a first-time voter.
I have been hearing about elections since I was born. But because of the circumstances, no elections were taking place.
We want better things. We don't want to live like this. We have barely any water and it's salty. We're tired of this life.
The vote was organized by the Palestinian Authority, which governs the occupied West Bank. It amended the law requiring candidates to accept the Palestinian Liberation Organization's program and its agreements with Israel. Hamas, which controls Gaza, and other Palestinian factions boycotted the process. Candidates from the PA's party, Fatah, and its affiliates won almost half the seats in Deir al-Balah. Hamas downplayed the result.
What is required is to have complete electoral events at the presidential and legislative levels, and the National Council too. These municipal elections are service-oriented and have no political dimension.
But Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas says the vote was symbolic and a pilot project.
Gaza is an inseparable part of the State of Palestine. The elections were held there in the hope that when things calm down, elections will be held across the entire Gaza Strip.
In the occupied West Bank, Fatah and its affiliates ran unopposed and won in many areas. Turnout there was just over 50%. In Gaza, only 23%. But some Palestinians in the Strip say the vote was an opportunity to stand strong during a fragile ceasefire that Israel's violating every day, and while Trump's plan for Gaza's future sidelines Palestinians.
Our hope for these elections, God willing, is that they will reaffirm Palestinian nationalism, prevent the erasure of Palestinian identity, and solidify our connection to this land, our roots, and our ancestors.
Dmitry Medvedenko, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Now let's bring in our guests. All of them are joining us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Ahmed Fattouh is the spokesperson for Fatah and also known as the Palestine National Liberation Movement. Jalal Abu Khatir is a human rights advocate and policy manager at Hamla, a non-profit digital rights organisation. And Xavier Abu Eid is a political analyst and former communications director for the Palestine Liberation Organisation. A warm welcome to you all. I want to start with Ahmed first. Almost every single aspect of Palestinian life is controlled by Israel, and that goes for all three of you. Yet, these municipal elections, Ahmed, are important. Just walk us through why they are important.
Thank you for having me, and greetings to your guests and the audience. Of course, it's very important for the Palestinian people to practice their democratic right and to elect their representatives and leaders in order to send a political message to the world that Palestine is a state and has a governance and has a people who are fully aware of their rights and want to practice democracy, despite the genocide, despite the destruction of the Israeli occupation that's surrounding our cities and villages, threatening our life in every aspect. And here we are standing tall and strong despite the genocide to go to elect with a high election turnout rate that is one of the highest in the region and probably around the world. That is a strong message that Palestinians are highly educated and full aware of their rights and want to build their state and reconstruct their country despite the mass crimes of the occupation. And the participation of Gaza and Deir al-Balah sends a message that Gaza and West Bank is united under the Palestinian flag.
Javier, but this election wasn't about self-determination. It wasn't about self-rule. This was about, effectively, municipal services, like picking up the trash. Does that dilute it? Because it really isn't that important, surely.
Thank you, Imran. I think historically, Palestinian municipal elections have been extraordinarily important for the Palestinian national movement. Let's remember that right after the starting of the Israeli occupation, Israel tried to have something like municipal elections 1972, 1976, in an idea to divide Palestinians between the PLO outside and the people here. It didn't work for them. In 76, PLO candidates won almost every single seat, and that's why we didn't have elections till the Palestinian Authority came to Palestine. But I would not put these elections out of context. Very few people actually, compared to the amount of the Palestinians, could vote. Myself in Ramallah, I couldn't vote myself. And I think the expectations for what a municipal election could bring are too high. And just to give an example, I mean, I'm from Bethlehem originally. One of the main problems that Bethlehem has is traffic congestion. It could not be solved by a mayor. It would be solved by taking part of this 87% of Bethlehem that is occupied by Israeli settlements and military bases. So in other words, it's always important to have elections, but at the same time, we should not put those elections out of context. Just one last point, Imran. I think the previous elections 4 years ago had much more competition than these elections we just had this week.
Jalal, you're also unable to vote, but for a slightly different reason. You live in occupied East Jerusalem. So you don't have any rights anyway. You can't vote in the municipal elections because of the apartheid system, effectively, and you can't vote in occupied East Jerusalem either. So what do the elections mean to you?
Thank you, Imran. I'll probably start with answering, correcting you slightly. I am able to vote if I'm a resident in the city of Ramallah. However, as I'm a resident in Jerusalem, my locality is not Ramallah, but it's not excluding me to vote. I'm a big fan. I'm a very big proponent of local elections of all kinds. Local elections reflect local values and democracy, and trying to, find a way forward together for any type of community. And I'm really proud of Ramallah and other places across the West Bank for the democratic semblance that the municipal elections would have had in previous years, but this is not the case this year at all. I frequent Ramallah perhaps more than Jerusalem, and I've been very carefully following a situation where this municipal election, which is local elections, it's not about Palestinian unity, it's about local representation and belonging and services. In a way, as Javier did mention, it does play a bigger role when people feel like they belong in a democratic process. However, we should address the elephant in the room, is that there is no legitimate process of representation for the Palestinians, who I am one of them. As a Palestinian Jerusalemite, I feel excluded from these processes because there isn't a larger process that includes me as a Jerusalemite, doesn't even include, just not the West Bank, Gaza, Jerusalem, also Palestinians elsewhere, in a way that would say this is a leadership that speaks for the Palestinian people, whether it's between the river and the sea, or whether it's the Palestinian people as a whole unit, through the PLO. I don't feel this, so there is an exclusion that I feel I'm always forced to face due to Israel and due to this current reality.
Ahmed, one of the driving forces that the Palestinian president was very keen to push was this is about Palestinian unity. Yet, Mahmoud Abbas amended the election law to go back to what the PLO had actually said, which is about recognizing Israel, ending the armed struggle. That's something that Hamas could not agree to. So effectively, Mahmoud Abbas froze out Hamas. What do you make of that accusation?
I believe that's not true. There was no precondition for the election. It was only asked that they recognize that the PLO to be the sole representative of the Palestinian people, which is quite well known already. But even that was removed later on, and the parties were involved in the elections. The left participated, PFLP and the Democratic Front has participated in the elections. And the gates were open for anybody who want to nominate themselves. And despite the calls and the campaign that was led by Hamas and the Islamist forces to boycott the elections, we had a turnout rate of 56%. So that is a referendum by the Palestinian people that they believe on the national unity and democratic process, and believe in the landslide victory of Fatah, that it's a referendum that they believe in the national.
Ahmed, you can't call it a landslide victory when not everybody voted, and there was only 56% in the areas that were allowed to vote. I want to come to Javier here. Javier, you're shaking your head as Ahmed was speaking. Why?
Because again, I think elections are a good thing. And in some places, the elections took place well. But we cannot claim that those elections were as inclusive. I think there are many issues that prevented people from presenting other lists in order to be able to compete. There were economic matters that affected, of course, the participation here. But at the same time, I fully agree with the PLO political platform, but in order to put the political platform as a condition to run for elections, this is something that prevented a number of sources. And I spoke with some candidates. I spoke, for example, with people that wanted to run in Ramallah, and they told me we were not willing to sign on those conditions.
I want to come to Jalal. The PLO, we just talked about that. That's the Palestine Liberation Organization. It's the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, recognized by the international community. The PA, the Palestinian Authority, is relatively new, only came about after the Oslo Accords in 1993. So the simple question I want to ask you, as a Palestinian living in occupied East Jerusalem, has the PA been a failure?
The PA is there. However, again, I repeat that there is no legitimacy for it to be the body that rules over the Palestinian people and decides over their fate and the future. There is a lack of any legitimacy due to the lack of any democratic process, whether it's the PA or the main party. The ruling party is Fatah indeed, and there isn't a genuine democracy within the party that people can feel like this is a representation of a major sector of the Palestinian society, especially those living under occupation. There are many priorities for people living under occupation. These include literally the safety of their lives and their livelihoods, the lands. There is an unprecedented settler advancement throughout the West Bank over the last 2 years, and it feels like this PA has been absent from this existential threat. So this is a problem where people feel like, where is the PA, and why is it claiming that this democratic process for the municipality is a show of its success when we are actually facing a different reality here on the ground?
Ahmed, the criticism of the PA is, something that I hear all the time, particularly when I've lived in Palestine itself. And it's something, one of the things people say is that the Palestinians are the only people that have to give guarantees under the security guarantee to the occupiers, that the Palestinian Authority is a functionary, not to the Palestinian people, but to the occupation. What do you make of that accusation?
These are false accusations. First of all, nobody asked them to give guarantees for the security of the occupation. We only ask that we respect the PLO agreements of the past. I don't see any party in any country in the world where they say put preconditions for the government before going to elections. I haven't heard the Labour Party, for example, in the UK saying, I won't recognize the parliament if I go to the elections. But yet we hear it from the far right and the far left in Palestine. Of course, that's false. Nobody put any preconditions. We're only saying that this is the PLO, the sole representative of the Palestinian people, and we refuse wholeheartedly any external agenda or agendas. And we're only going to a Palestinian national agenda that is made and created by the Palestinians, but not by outside forces. And when we speak about democracy, I don't believe there is anybody more democratic faction in Palestine more than Fatah. It is we who called for the elections of the local elections. And it's we who called for the syndicate election, which we also won by vast majority. I believe your guests will suspect or doubt that, but they could go back to the numbers. And Hamas has participated under independent names, independent lists. So they need to revise their information. This victory is a call by the Palestinian national entities that we want a united front and we want a Palestinian program that is realistic and capable of achieving actual results, not something imaginary and based on imagination and false promises from outside.
No, I want to come to Javier here. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Hamas versus Fatah kind of discussion here, but I do want to focus on the Palestinian Authority. It was created, as I've said before, after the 1993 Oslo Accords, and it was designed to effectively become the Palestinian government and the Palestinian governance system. That didn't happen because of the occupation. Now, just run us through the reasons that the Palestinian Authority was effectively strangled at birth, because I know you have opinions on this.
What the Palestinian Authority, when it came out to exist, it was part of an interim agreement that was supposed to last only for 5 years, which is the Oslo Interim Agreement, and that's how we started to have elections here in the occupied Palestinian territory, with the exception of East Jerusalem. But once again, I think that the discussion should go into what are the prospects for a future of Palestinian democracy rather than what we have had now. So far, I don't see this as a referendum. It was not presented by Fatah nor by any other party as a referendum. It was a very local election. Once again, in some places, there was a very sincere competition. In many other places, there was no competition. And as a matter of fact, two of the most important municipalities for the history of Palestinian national movement, Nablus and Ramallah, did not have a competitive election. So in other words, I think it's important to present the position that there was an election. I think it was very important that Deir al-Balah was included in Gaza, but let's not take those elections out of context.
Let's not take the elections out of context, says Javier. Jalal, I want to put that to you because most of Gaza has been destroyed, so they couldn't have elections. 60-70% of the occupied West Bank is either got illegal settlements on it or illegal settlements are planned to be built by the Israelis. Some of them illegal under Israeli law, all of them illegal under international law. You can't have elections, you can't have a democracy in those situations. What are your thoughts on that?
Sorry to be cheesy, but you never say never, especially to things like this. There's always a way, and there's been solutions proposed in the past where various international actors were willing to intervene to guarantee that elections were held, especially in Jerusalem, where I'm from. I think the big obstacle that stopped the last major election that was supposed to happen in Palestine was, in my view, an excuse that Jerusalem was excluded due to Israeli occupation decisions. And I am aware that that is not fully the case because there were many alternatives being proposed and being put forward on the table for Jerusalemites to participate meaningfully in this process to ensure that East Jerusalem is not excluded in any Palestinian national election process. And I feel, and again, this is a political decision to escape accountability in front of the populace, the people. The ruling party, again, is avoiding facing the people. And there are ways to include not only Palestinians between the river and the sea, again, diaspora, in a bigger process for the PLO. And that's not really given the importance that it should be when there's such a crisis of representation. And we are in such a critical position in our history as a Palestinian people. So it's important to have some kind of legitimacy for any actor who purchased to speak in the name of the Palestinian people going forward.
Ahmed, is it time to disband the PA and go back to the PLO and get Palestinian unity first, even if that unity is fractured by opinion, but get unity first and renegotiate with the international community for a different type of Palestinian Authority? Are we at that stage?
Look, President Mahmoud Abbas made a decree calling for general elections and for a parliamentary elections in November. So that was a clear form and a clear call by the Fatah movement led by President Mahmoud to go for unity. And the only way to unite ourselves is through the ballot box. And we are not afraid to go for an election. And we called all the Palestinian parties to go that way. And we have called for a united front where we, under the dome of the PLO, that we devise our political program, our national liberation agenda of how to face this catastrophic situation we are living right now after 3 years of genocide and the ongoing genocide that did not stop until now. And I have to point out that to your guest and the audience, there it seems misunderstanding. The local authorities that did not have elections, that because there was a victory by acclamation and a consensus among the national parties. So when that is by law, this is something very common and everywhere around the world. When there is no competition, that means it's uncontested election. So therefore, automatically the list or the consensus list is already winning. So that's what happened in Ramallah and that's what happened in Nablus.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. If you've got one
factions.
If no one disagrees with that, if you've got one candidate and everybody votes for that candidate is won. If there is competition and a second candidate and people vote for that candidate is won. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. What I would like to get to the bottom with you, Ahmed, is the fact that these elections were held under extreme circumstances and do not represent the entirety of the Palestinian people. That's a point you have to concede.
Of course, it is happening in an extreme situation, and that extreme situation is going to stay for more than we expect, and we have to face it. We have to face it by geographically uniting Palestine between West Bank and Gaza. Hamas need to end their coup that started in 2007 and go back to the Palestinian house. We have to go to the elections in Jerusalem. This is not something symbolic. This is a matter of sovereignty. East Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine, and we will not accept anything to undermine these facts. And regarding the Palestinian diaspora, when we call for the PNC, the Palestinian National Council elections, which include 350 seats, 200 in the occupied Palestinian territories, and 150 from the diaspora, then that is a representative for the all Palestinians all around the world. And we are calling for elections, not for...
Sorry, Ahmed, I'm going to stop you there because I want to come to the other... Ahmed, I want to stop you there because I want to come to the other guests as well. Javier, let's talk about this in terms of kind of how you move forward. Now, we've had these elections. They are a symbol, says, Fatah and a lot of other people, actually, of Palestinian unity. That surely is the most important thing here, not the fact that most Palestinians couldn't vote. Do you think?
No, I entirely disagree. Once again, I think some places would really have participation, and it was important to have elections. But we cannot claim that the Palestinian decision-making process is as inclusive as it should be. And looking forward, I think it's very important to pick on elements that have been raised. For example, elections for the Palestinian National Council that is supposed to represent all Palestinians worldwide. I have never myself elected anyone for the Palestinian National Council, and I think it's very important that this opportunity could be given. But in order to go to those elections, you need to have agreements between political parties. You need to have an electoral registry that I don't think so far it's there for Palestinians in exile. So, in other words, I think there is so much work to do. There are elements that Palestinians in exile, in particular, they don't trust much about how things are being done. But I also believe that if we are able to unite as Palestinians with the goal of ending the Israeli occupation, I think there is still an opportunity.
Jalal, what do you think that opportunity is then? If we're talking about ending the occupation as the end goal of all of this, then perhaps Palestinian Authority municipal elections, picking up the trash, providing services are a bit of a distraction, do you think?
Not at all. I don't think it's a distraction. I think we need to encourage local democracy, just because I do foresee a collapse of this entire institution of the PA, and I'm seeing the financial trouble that people are going through on a individual and personal level. I'm seeing the level of coercion it takes to actually control and to influence the results of major decisions in politics and elections locally. I can see how volatile everything is, and I believe that there needs to be some form of local representation for people. And if we see more, localities processing in a way where it would elect a form of leadership, it could actually provide a voice for Palestinians who are living in these communities under occupation, where people feel like, oh, we belong to this. But the problem with this current process is the fact that it's exclusionary of various groups of Palestinian society, and also it's not really fully representative of Palestinians living under occupation. Yes, a high turnout. However, there are no signs that would make me feel encouraged about the results of this current municipal elections. I just do believe that we do need to encourage any kind of process that goes on locally to encourage participation.
Ahmed, I started this conversation by asking you, these elections are important because they show that the Palestinians are united. That's the Fatah position. Is anything that you've heard over the last half hour made you change your mind on that, or do you still think that these are very important to show the world that the Palestinians are united?
Well, we have to look to the facts on the grounds. This was an inclusive election. The door was open for any faction to go to make and register a list for its party. And
that's very difficult to do when your house has been destroyed in Gaza. It's very difficult to do when you can't get to certain places in the West Bank.
Of course, if you allow me, with the situation in Gaza, we have a genocide and our people are decimated. Many of them are living in refugee tents. They have scarcity in food and in medicine and everything. The turnout was 22% in Deir al-Balah, in the middle of Gaza. And Deir al-Balah was capable to go for the vote because among the destruction in Gaza, it was the least. It had 45%, I believe, destruction. And we have to point out to the elephant in the room. The one who stopped democracy is Hamas coup in 2007. Gaza is banned from voting since 2007 because of Hamas. Now, thankfully, they have revised that decision and what allowed for this election to take place after the catastrophic destruction that they caused through their unstrategic thinking and going unilaterally into an adventure that was not voted nor has been discussed with the Palestinian national factions. We have been doing elections since 2007. That did not stop. We have went to the local elections in different occasions, 2022 and in 2018 and so on. And we have made the syndicates election just recently. And we are going to the PNC election in November and actually to Fatah elections.
Ahmed, sorry, we have run out of time, and I did give you a clear run to say your piece, and you've put Fatah's position very, very clearly there. I want to thank all our guests, Ahmed Fattouh, Jalal Abu Khater, and Xavier Abu Eid. And I want to thank you as well for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. That's it from me, Imran Khan, and the team here in Doha. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in just a moment. Stay tuned.